All right, happy Sabbath, everybody.
Happy Sabbath.
First and foremost, like to give all praises to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel. I want to send greetings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad and the men, women, and children that's putting in the work, doing the work of the Lord week, day in and day out to help this word spread, to make sure that your calling and election is sure. So let's open it up with the reading of the law. I'll open it up in Deuteronomy chapter 9 and verse 1.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 9 and verse 1. Hear, O Israel, thou art to pass over Jordan this day, to go in to possess nations greater and mightier than thyself, cities great and fenced up to heaven, a people great and tall, the children of the Anakims, who thou knowest, and of whom thou hast heard say, who can stand before the children of Anak? Understand, therefore, this day, that the Lord thy God is he which goeth over before thee as a consuming fire. He shall destroy them, and he shall bring them down before thy face. So shalt thou drive them out and destroy them quickly, as the Lord hath said unto thee. Speak not thou in thine heart, after that the Lord thy God hath cast them out from before thee, saying, for my righteousness the Lord hath brought me in to possess this land. But for the wickedness of these nations the Lord doth drive them out from before thee, not for thy righteousness, or for the uprightness of thy heart, dost thou go to possess their land. But for the wickedness of these nations, the Lord thy God doth drive them out from before thee, and that he may perform the word which the Lord sware unto your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
So he said he's driving out these nations from before us because of their wickedness. So that's the reading of today's reading of the law, Deuteronomy chapter 9, 1 through 5. Let's get Revelations 14 and verse 12.
The book of Revelation, chapter 14, and verse 12. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus.
So here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Christ. Faith of Christ. So let's make sure something. All right, we good. We good on broadcasting. All right, so today's class, excuse me, is titled Integration or Separation, which is godly. Integration or separation, which is godly. And the reason for this topic is because we're coming upon um, Martin Luther King Day. It's Monday, so-called Monday, the so-called Martin Luther King Day, where we give honor. You know, they talk about the civil rights movement this whole month. Uh, bring up that history. So we're gonna talk about the integration. The civil rights movement was about civil rights and integrating us into this nation. When the slaves became free, we still wasn't treated equal. So our people had to fight to get these rights. And one of the person who led that fight was Martin Luther King, who we know they assassinated. So is integration part of God's plan? When you examine the history of the civil rights movement, which one was better for so-called African Americans? Was it integration was better? Was separation was better? This is what we gonna talk about today, and we're gonna cover a lot of information because we gotta cover a lot of history. So y'all take good notes. Everybody online, take good notes. It's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be a lot, but it's necessary. So to open up this class, we got to start. Go to view your channel. Playlist. The first one, view full playlist. It says right under it. All right, so we got some. So this is a series of videos we go watch. Open up the video where scroll down, life aboard a slave ship. Open that in a new tab. No, just right click it. No, hold on. Get right click on the image on the thumbnail. Open a new window. Should have said tab, but that's cool. All right, skip it and pause, and then share it out. You should have got these ready. So this first video, so the first subtopic that we gonna talk about, because where do the civil rights start? It starts with, of course, slavery and oppression. If there was no slavery, if there was no oppression, there wouldn't be no civil rights movement. So we gonna start with slavery and oppression. Put it on the full screen.
1525 to 1866.
Go back to the StreamYard. Yeah, put that on full screen. Put the fair use. So we want to put this as fair use, fair use. And take the caption off. Let's get it.
12.5 million Africans were taken from their homeland and forcibly transported across the Atlantic, a journey that approximately 2 million of them would not survive. By the turn of the 18th century, European merchants were building vessels capable of transporting hundreds of enslaved people per journey. These ships had extra portholes for ventilation, weapons mounted on deck in case of rebellion, and additional compartments added below deck to take on more human cargo. Before boarding the ships at African port cities, enslaved people were stripped of their clothing and remaining possessions and had their heads forcibly shaved. During boarding, which could take weeks or even months, enslaved people lived on the deck of the ship in a temporary wooden house constructed by the crew. The crew also installed netting around the deck of the ship, designed to catch those enslaved who might opt for death over forced servitude. Once moved below deck, enslaved people would find themselves stuffed into compartments with ceilings as low as 4.5 feet, where they would spend most of their voyage. They were segregated by gender and age. Adult men were kept separately and shackled in pairs. Women usually left unchained in their designated compartment, and children often free to move about the ship. There were no sanitary facilities of any kind. Enslaved people were forced to relieve themselves where they sat, creating hellish conditions when combined with the heat and lack of ventilation below deck. Disease was rampant. Dysentery, malaria, yellow fever, smallpox, measles, and influenza ravaged the enslaved and crew members alike. The enslaved people generally spent about 8 hours a day above deck, but were still separated by gender, with a barricado, a reinforced wall that could be used to protect crew members in case of a revolt. Enslaved people were also subject to forced exercise, which sometimes included dance and song for the entertainment of the crew. Enslaved captives deemed disobedient were tortured and beaten, usually whipped with the especially cruel cat o' nine tails, a tool designed to inflict maximum pain. Enslaved people who refused to eat their typical meal of rice and beans were forced to do so, sometimes with a speculum oris, a medieval tool used to force open a person's mouth. Women, while usually left unshackled, were raped and sexually abused by members of the crew, sometimes arriving in the New World, carrying the children of their attackers. But it was the women, using their minuscule freedoms, who would often coordinate mutinies against their captors. But these rebellions were rarely successful. The true extent of the horrors of the Middle Passage came to light in a 1783 court trial over the slave ship Zong. The Zong left present-day Ghana in August of 1781 with 442 enslaved on board. After a 2-month journey riddled with navigation errors, 62 enslaved people and 7 crew members had perished without reaching their destination. Disease was spreading throughout the ship, and fresh water was running dangerously low. Captain Luke Collingwood was afraid of the financial cost of more deaths. Enslaved people that died of disease were not covered by the ship's insurance, but the enslaved who drowned were. Collingwood ordered approximately 130 enslaved people thrown overboard. He claimed it was necessary to do so to halt the spread of disease. At the trial between the Zong's owners and their insurance company, the owners argued that because it was legal to kill sick animals for the health of a ship, it was legal to treat enslaved people the same. The court agreed with the ship's owners, but the trial itself exposed the horrors aboard the Zong, and its story was republished by British abolitionists with the name of the ship redacted, meant to show that.
Let's go to the next one. You can X that out.
This tragedy could happen.
The next one is Life of a Plantation Slave. Do open a new tab.
The life of a plantation slave was a sad one, of forced labor, poverty, and ongoing humiliation. Under the law, slaves were considered to be the property of the plantation owner, just like his farm animals. If you were a slave, you could be sold at any time and your family torn apart. If the ongoing misery of your life made you want to run away, you knew you would be hunted down and, if caught, brought back to the plantation, where you might be whipped or forced to wear a slave's collar like this one that had bells on it, so the owner's men could easily find you if you tried to escape again. In the South, it was illegal for slaves to receive an education, to marry, to vote, to own property, to testify in court, or even to earn their freedom through work. There were 2 basic types of slaves on plantations. The luckiest were the house slaves, who took care of the owner's house and family, while the field slaves worked in the fields from sunrise to sunset with just one 15-minute break a day. To eat, slaves were given meager rations, mostly of cornmeal, pork, and molasses. And every year, slaves received 1 new set of winter and summer clothes and a new blanket. Most slaves shared their small cabins with 10 to 12 people and slept on straw piled on a dirt floor. And so the lives of the slaves who did the work on plantations were filled with unending hardship, suffering, and poverty, in order that those who enslaved them could enjoy lives of comfort, luxury, and ease.
So naturally, when
All right, so let's get Deuteronomy 28. So this was the slavery and oppression part. This is the whole reason the civil rights movement had to start. So now we're going to see if this is biblical. Let's get Deuteronomy 28 and verse 15.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 15. It shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
So that this was the reason for the curses. Hold this spot. Go to Daniel chapter 9, and we're going to start at 10. So what is the important reason of the curses? I know some people who don't know how to prophesy in the Bible, they don't know how to tie prophecy to. They'll never understand who is who today in 2024. They won't understand when you see the word Ishmaelites in the Bible. They won't know who is the Ishmaelites in 2024 because they don't know how to tie prophecies in the Bible to history. It's important. That's why it's the Bible said it better to prophesy. Let's get real quick. First, what's with that thing, man? It's about that time. Let's get Daniel chapter 9, start at 10.
Daniel chapter 9 and verse 10.
No, what I said, my bad. I said 1 Corinthians 14.
You're right.
1 Corinthians 14. And let me look at it. Because this is going into people speaking in tongue. People are more worried about speaking in tongue than to prophesy. If you worried about a whop bada bang bang to whop bam boom better than prophesying, you ain't gonna understand nothing in the Bible. So let's show that the Bible say that. Read verse 1. 1 Corinthians 14 and 1.
1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 1. Follow after charity and desire spiritual gifts, but rather that ye may prophesy.
So he said, desire spiritual gifts, but I'd rather that you prophesy. Go ahead.
For he that speaketh in an unknown tongue,
He that speak in tongues, go ahead.
speaketh not unto men, but unto God.
Because you're not speaking unto men, you're speaking to God. Go ahead.
For no man understandeth him. Howbeit in the spirit he speaketh mysteries.
Go ahead.
But he that prophesieth speaketh unto men to edification and exhortation.
It said, he that prophesies speaketh to men to edification. Remember, that's the goal. The goal is to edify. People who prophesy, they take prophecies in the Bible and they tie them to real life history. That's why people don't know who the Israelites are today. They don't know who the Edomites are today. They don't even care because they don't prophesy. Verse 4.
Verse 4. He that speaketh in an unknown tongue edifieth himself.
You edifying yourself. Speaking in tongues is just to edify yourself. Go ahead.
But he that prophesieth edifieth the church.
The person that prophesies edifies the church. Go ahead.
I would that ye all spake with tongues.
He says, yeah, speaking in tongues is cool. Go ahead.
But
I'd rather what?
That ye prophesy.
But I'd rather that you prophesy. Go ahead.
For greater is he that prophesieth.
Greater is the man that prophesies. Go ahead.
Than he that speaketh with tongues.
As than he that speak in tongues. Go ahead.
Except he interpret, that the church may receive edifying.
So we supposed to prophesy. A person that prophesy knows how to break down the Bible. People who speak let's say contrary to the doctrine that we teach, is because they don't look at prophecies. If y'all understand that, they don't believe in the prophecies. The scriptures say Israel gonna rule. When the kingdom Israel gonna rule, all the Gentiles go be under the Israelites. That's what the prophecies say. Other people said, nah, everybody gonna be equal. That's not biblical. That's why do they say that? Because they don't believe in prophecy. They don't understand prophecies. So that's why we can break it down. So let's get Daniel chapter 9. This is my point for going there. Daniel chapter 9, and we're going to start at verse 10.
The book of Daniel, chapter 9, starting at verse 10. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants, the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing, that they might not obey thy voice.
So remember, we read in Deuteronomy 28:15, if you break the commandments, curses. So here, Daniel is saying, all Israel transgress. So what's going to happen? Go ahead.
Therefore, the curse is poured upon us.
So I said, therefore, we get the curses. Go ahead.
And the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, because we have sinned against
That's
him.
what we just read in Deuteronomy 28. The curse that's written in the law of Moses go come upon us. Now, why is this important? Watch what he say about these curses. Go ahead.
Verse 12. And he hath confirmed his words, which he spake against us, and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil.
He said, by bringing upon us a great evil. Go ahead.
For under the whole heaven have not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem.
So he said, these curses, it ain't gonna happen to nobody else like upon Jerusalem, upon Israel. Because if the curses happen to everybody, we wouldn't know who Israel is today. We'll just have to believe whatever they tell us. So he said that's why the curses is important. So when we read about, we just watched a video about slavery and about the stuff that happened to us in slavery, we can read that same stuff in the Bible. Why is that important? Because the Bible said that's not going to happen to nobody else. Read that part again, verse 12.
Daniel chapter 9 and verse 12. And he hath confirmed his words, which he spake against us, and against our judges that judged us, by bringing upon us a great evil.
He says it's going to come a great evil. Go ahead.
For under the whole heaven have not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem.
There's going to be this great evil that nobody's ever seen before. So that's how you prophesy. All you have to do is, okay, who this great evil that we read about in the Bible, who did it happen to in history? That's why it's easy to determine who Israel is. Now let's go back to Deuteronomy 28. So we can't, people try to read these. Why come when we read about the stuff that happened to the Israelites in the Bible, it matches our history to a T? It can't say it's only gonna happen to Israel, and then and then when we look at history, it happened to us and the so-called Jewish people, which this stuff didn't even happen to them. That's why it's so clear. The stuff we read about slavery, they know the history. Going on slavery, on slave ships, being on plantation fields, picking cotton. The stuff didn't ever happen to them, but yet they can claim Israel, live in the land. Say they God's people. But we the only ones fighting it. We the only ones that care enough to take our identity back because we read in our history in the Bible. So let's go to Deuteronomy 28, We read 15. Go to 16.
Deuteronomy 28 and verse 16. Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field.
So the city is talking about, the city is going into today. In all the cities in America, the cities is cursed. The ghettos, the trash everywhere, carjackings, shootings, murder. The cities is crazy. And then he said, curse, you're going to be in the field. The field is talking about the plantation. We was cursed. It said that when we looked at the video, the life on the plantation was horrible. They got 2 outfits a year. Say one for summertime and one for winter. They had 2 outfits. That's us being cursed in the field. Go ahead.
Verse 17. Cursed shall be thy
Jump
pasture.
to 22.
Verse 22. The Lord shall smite thee with a consumption, and with a fever, and with an inflammation, and with an extreme burning.
You remember it said when they was on the boats, they was sick. All the diseases that they was getting when they was under the boat, smallpox, all the stuff that they was getting, they had to throw them overboard. That was the part of the curse. Go ahead.
And with an extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish.
Jump to 29.
Verse 29. And thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save
He
thee.
said we was gonna be only oppressed. In those days, we was only oppressed. Still today, not to the magnitude of back then, but it's still oppression. But you got to think about it. At the time of Martin Luther King, look at the stuff that was going on. They was only oppressed always. Jump the 33.
Verse 33.
30.
Verse 30. Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her.
Another man gonna lie with. That's the one at your wife, nothing you can do about it.
Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof.
All the work we done was for them. Jump to 32.
Verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. And there shall be no might in thine hand.
You couldn't. It didn't matter where your sons and daughters went, or if the master want to sell them, you couldn't do nothing. Verse 33.
Verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed.
We shall be what?
Only oppressed.
Only oppressed. Go ahead.
And crushed always.
And crushed always. Jump to 41.
Verse 41. Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity.
They're going into slavery. Go ahead.
All thy trees and fruits of thy land shall the locust consume. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low.
Go ahead.
He shall lend to thee.
So he go lend to thee. This going into the banks. He go lend us money. Go ahead.
And thou shalt not lend to him.
But we not go lend to him. Go ahead.
He shall be the head.
He go be the head.
And thou shalt be the tail.
And we go be the tail. He go be in charge over us. This is prophecy. Verse 45.
Verse 45. Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee, and overtake thee, till thou be destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder upon thy seed forever.
Why? Go ahead.
Because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things.
What's going to happen?
And verse 48, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
So a lot of this stuff is matching what we read, what we saw in that video. It's not a coincidence. We got a lot to cover. This is basics. Jump to 64.
Verse 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people, from the one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which thou neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone.
All right, jump to 66.
Verse 66.
Well, 65, my bad.
65. And among these nations,
So when you get scattered to these different nations, go ahead.
and among these nations shalt thou find no ease.
You ain't gonna have. It's not gonna be no rest time. Go ahead.
Neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest,
Because you go work you to death.
but the Lord shall give thee there a trembling heart, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shall have no assurance of thy life.
Go to 68.
Verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
With ships. This is what we just was reading about. With ships. This is how we was going to be scattered. Go ahead.
By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you.
So when you link these histories, link these prophecies up with history, you can see who it's talking about. So now we see the oppression. We see the slavery. Go to Baruch chapter 4. Why did we go into slavery? We read in 15, but Baruch gives a little more detail. Baruch 4 and 6.
The book of Baruch, chapter 4 and verse 6. You were sold to the nations, not for your destruction.
So he said, we wasn't sold for us to be destroyed. Go ahead.
But because ye moved God to wrath.
Because we pissed God off. We told him we was going to do something, and we did the opposite. Go ahead.
Ye were delivered unto the enemy.
So we moved God to wrath, and he delivered us to our enemies. Jump to verse 15.
Verse 15. For he hath brought a nation upon them from far, a shameless nation.
And the Edomites, they was a shameless nation. Let's just stick to the Americans right now. They was a shameless nation. They didn't care what they did to us. They looked at us as animals. They was ashamed. They had no shame in what they was doing. Matter of fact, they felt what they was doing was right. So they was a shameless nation. Go ahead.
For he hath brought a nation upon them from afar, a shameless nation, and of strange language, who neither reverence old man nor pity child.
They didn't care what age you was in. All of us can get lynched. Lynching boys, Emmett Till, to grown old men. They didn't care. Verse 16.
These have carried away the dear beloved children of the widow, and left her that was alone, desolate, without daughters.
Without daughter. They didn't care who. Everybody can get it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a timeline. Because it's a lot of information, and I didn't just want to breeze this American history. So we're going to look at a timeline of American history. Go back to the videos. Put that fair use. So the next video is the history of civil rights. Scroll up. Let's go down. Right there. History of Civil Rights Movement. So the timeline we're going to start from is when they freed, when we were so-called free, 1865. So we're going to start from there and kind of go.
I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
Human progress is neither automatic nor inevitable. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the history of the American Civil Rights Movement. The end of the American Civil War in 1865 effectively meant the end of slavery, but African Americans were in for a long struggle before they were finally awarded equal rights. As of 1870, all eligible male citizens were able to vote. However, blacks were discouraged to by violence and eventually legal stipulations. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled to maintain racial segregation in private businesses in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Soon broadened to include schools, many southern states applied this separate but equal mentality to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application of Jim Crow laws, which resulted in blacks being...
All right, stop sharing. Well, share, but put me on the screen. Yeah. So now they said that in 1896 there was a case, Plessy versus Ferguson. So we're gonna do a quick little timeline. Plessy versus Ferguson. This was a black man. He was on a train, and he was sitting on a train. They kicked him off because he was black. They said black people ain't supposed to be on the train. He took him to court. When he took them to court, he won. He lost the case, and they determined. So they knew it was a messed up case, but for them to save face, they came up with this term "separate but equal." Do y'all remember that in the Civil Rights Museum? That separate but equal. Go to open up the Gmail. Go to Gmail. That's Google. I said Gmail. I won't let you go. All right, that's cool. That's cool. It won't let you go. So there's I had an image of it, the separate but equal. So the separate but equal means that what the case did was that every business had to have a so-called color side and a white side. That's what it meant. They said if you got a business in America, we separate. They said separate. So y'all separate from us, but y'all equal. So they had to have two sides in your business. You had to have a colored only side and a white only side. That's what it. So that's what that 18. That's why that Plessy versus Ferguson is important, because that's when they came up with that. So they had two sides. So y'all know what happened. The white only side was all clean, look good. The color side, what they said, y'all gotta eat that. The restaurants, y'all gotta buy y'all food out back. Go to the back. We'll slide. We got tables in the alley. Y'all can sit out there and eat y'all food, buy y'all food. So so the color side was always some bull crap. Even the water fountains, they had colored only water fountains. The water wasn't even clean coming out the water fountain. That's what happened. So let's go back to the video.
being treated as second-class citizens. Segregated schools, public transit, restrooms, water fountains, and more continued well into the 1900s. In 1909, a group of prominent segregated to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application awarded. The end of the American Civil War in 1865 effectively meant the end of slavery, But African Americans were in for a long struggle before they were finally awarded equal rights. As of 1870, all eligible male citizens were able to vote. However, blacks were discouraged to by violence and eventually legal stipulations. In 1896, the Supreme Court ruled to maintain racial segregation in private businesses in a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. Soon broadened to include schools, many southern states applied this separate but equal mentality to all aspects of life. However, this led to the application of Jim Crow laws, which resulted in blacks being treated as second-class citizens. Segregated schools, public transit, restrooms, water fountains, and more continued well into the 1900s. In 1909, a group of prominent black and white campaigners created the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP. Their goal was to increase racial equality and challenge issues like the Jim Crow laws. Unfortunately, it was between 1910 and 1930 that white supremacist group the Ku Klux Klan saw its biggest expansion amid increased racial friction. Following the First World War, the NAACP was devoted to ending lynching by white vigilantes. By mid-century, the group became instrumental in the Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka court case. This class action suit, filed in 1951, asked that segregation in schools be struck down. Taken to the Supreme Court, the case resulted in the first integrated school in the United States to open in the fall of 1955. Encouraged by the
So now that Brown, so in 1954, the Brown versus the Board of Education, that's when, because we think about it, our people were smart. That's how you know we God's chosen people. We had people that was graduating from colleges, becoming lawyers, doctors, in a segregated, racist America. That our people, man, our people. This like that's how you know we God's people. Can't no other race handle that. Couldn't no other race handle that. So what happened was in 1954, the lawyers they won the case. They won the case. Brown versus Board of Education, meaning they had to segregation was over, meaning that now we can go to their schools. Now we can go into their businesses and all of this stuff. Segregation was over. But it was a different story on enforcing it. Just because they make a law don't mean enforcing it is a whole nother thing. So now play it.
Decision, the civil rights movement began to hold high-profile boycotts, marches, sit-ins, and other peaceful protests. These included 1955's Montgomery bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks. A watershed moment came in 1957 when a high school in Arkansas admitted a group of African American students, nicknamed the Little Rock Nine. Protested by fellow students, the governor, and even the state's National Guard, President Dwight Eisenhower eventually intervened to ensure the students' safe passage. By 1962, universities also began integrating, though black students were still met with protests and violence. The Southern Freedom Movement continued into the 60s with support from newly elected President John F. Kennedy and his brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The violence of the Birmingham, Alabama campaign influenced the president to fully endorse the movement.
A great change is at hand, and our task, our obligation, is to make that revolution, that change, peaceful and constructive for all.
On June 19, 1963, he proposed a civil rights bill to Congress, which was approved in 1964 after his death with support from President Lyndon Johnson. The bill struck down existing legislation that allowed for discrimination, and its approval was largely influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington of August 1963.
With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood.
Capturing the attention of the media and the population, this event attracted hundreds of thousands of people in support of civil rights. Following that, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 ended the prejudiced voting system. Instantly effective, blacks began voting and running for public office. However, just days later, on August 11th, a violent 6-day riot in the Los Angeles neighborhood of Watts resulted in 34 deaths. This was indicative of a period of racially motivated violence that occurred in the mid to late 1960s. This era also saw the rise of Black Power, led in large.
So just a quick summary of what happened. In 1896, they had the separate but equal, meaning every business had to have a side for white only and for color people, for everybody else. In 1954, the Brown versus the Board of Education came in and said that, you know what, that separate but equal is not equal. We need to integrate. That's where integration start to come in. We want to go to y'all schools. We want to go into y'all businesses. So they won the case, but that don't mean that the Edomites was gonna be like, yeah. They still had to enforce it. Then that's in 1950, in the 50s, that's when the Little Rock Nine, that's when the people tried to go into the schools, the black people who was going into the schools and all of that. And y'all seen how that happened. They didn't want them there and they were trying to get them to fight. That's when all that happened. So in 1964, we got the that's when they did the sit-ins too. Do y'all remember that when they did the sit-ins at the restaurants? They were sitting on the table trying to get served. The people were spitting on them, trying to kick them out, and all of that. I don't even know why you wanted to eat there. All they gonna do is spit in your like. Yeah, I don't even know why you wanted to eat there, but whatever. 1964, we got the Civil Rights Acts. We officially got civil rights. 1965, we officially gained the right to vote. Which we what? Then they said we got that in 1870. They said we was officially had the right to vote in 1870. So how did we get that in 1965 as well? It's just, it was all, what they call it, it's a smoke bomb. You know how they do stuff, they try to make us feel like we won. That's what all of us about. Because when it came down time for businesses and stuff to let us in, they like, hell no, y'all ain't coming in here. Seats taken. She was some Forrest Gump stuff. Seats taken. You can't sit here. So now they gotta enforce it. So now go to the next video. It's a lot of information. That's why I'm just doing a quick timeline. Go to the Civil Rights Movement. I think it's the first one. Yeah, let's get that. You got a lot of information. I get this timeline in y'all brain. Gets like, we have to know this American history because that's how we prove we Israel. That's why I like this time of year. We get to go into this history and tie with the Bible. All right, let's get.
Century after the end of the Civil War and the dawn of Reconstruction, African Americans still found themselves fighting for their basic rights as citizens. The modern civil rights movement in the mid-20th century finally secured them.
Most historians actually date the start of the formal civil rights movement to Brown versus Board of Education. Brown really stokes the fervor of the nation. Then, in December of 1955, Rosa Parks decided as an act of resistance that she would not give up her seat to a white man on the bus.
Rosa Parks' deliberate act of resistance led to a bus boycott that thrust into the limelight a young preacher with a PhD. He would become one of the movement's most charismatic leaders. His name was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
One of the most iconic moments is the March on Washington in 1963, led by Martin Luther King Jr.
200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come united in one cause.
One day right now in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today
This becomes visualized on the news and begins to change the way that Americans are starting to think about the civil rights movement.
As the civil rights movement attained greater visibility, it was often met with increased brutality and violence. Yet in the midst of so much sacrifice and heartbreak, the work of civil rights activists began to bear fruit.
In 1964, President Lyndon Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act of 64, and that's designed to desegregate businesses and government employment. And then in 1965, President Johnson signs the Voting Rights Act of 65.
The passage of the Voting Rights Act was a monumental victory for African Americans. Tragically, just 3 years after it was passed, Dr. King would be assassinated. Many feel, looking back, that the movement died that day. But in fact, the movement took on new forms and continued. And it must continue today, as important victories such as the Voting Rights Act are under attack.
Until we deal with the fact that the backlash is often made possible not just by the other side growing in power, but by those who claim to care about equality losing their own resolve. There will be moments of this cycle happening over and over again.
All right, we can stop it there. All right, so I know that was a lot of information. It was a lot of information that we threw, and I threw at y'all. But so now that's the timeline. We was free in 1865, 1896. They came with the Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal. In 1954, it was the Brown versus the Board of Education case that gave us deemed that the separate but equal was not really equal. So integration began, where we can go to the schools, go to the restaurants. But so 1950, that's when we started going to the schools. That's when we tried to go to the restaurant, because they had to enforce it too. It was one thing that they passed a law, but enforcing it was a whole nother thing. 1964, we got the Civil Rights Bill signed. 1965, we got the voting rights. So now let's talk about Martin Luther King Jr. So Martin Luther King Jr. was about integration. He was about integration. And me personally, I respect Dr. Martin Luther King, because at the time, you got to imagine at that time in history of that type of oppression, the stuff that he was saying, he didn't really know what, like, none of our people knew what to do. They just did what they thought was best. Peaceful protests. Let's get some stuff changed, get laws changed, and integrate with them. Is that part of God? Let's get Jeremiah chapter 50, and let's get verse 6. Jeremiah chapter 50 and verse 6.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 50, and verse 6. My people have been lost sheep.
So they was lost sheep. At that time, they was lost sheep. Just came out of slavery, dealing with oppression, didn't know if you was gonna be killed. They was lost sheep. Go ahead. Then the biggest thing is in idolatry. Remember, when we got free, what was one of the main things we were supposed to do? Jamil, think about it. I want y'all to think about it. When we was finally free, one of the first things that we were supposed to do was what? Got something to do with religion. It's the clue. Turn back to God, meaning let go of white Jesus. Because remember, we was let go of the slave doctrine. That was what we were supposed to remember. They was teaching us white Jesus, a slave was obey your master. The first thing we should have did was let go of the religion that they was teaching us. What did we do instead? We kept it. We kept it. We became free, but we kept the ideology, the religion that they gave us. That's where we messed up at. Because that kept us in what? Idolatry. That kept us in idolatry. That kept the very reason why we were slaves was for breaking the commandments. We so-called got free from slavery, and we still was breaking the commandment. We were still in idolatry. That was the issue with our people. So they was still what? Lost. They wasn't looking for answers for God. They just trying to, our people were smart too. Remember, they was doctors, lawyers, reverends, pastors. They were smart. They went to school. They were smart. And the only thing they can come up with is integration. That's what's going to fix the problem, integration. Read that again, verse 6.
Jeremiah 50 and verse 6. My people have been lost sheep. Their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains. They have gone from mountain to hill. They have forgotten their resting place.
They forgot their resting place. What happened? Verse 7.
All that found them have devoured them.
So everybody that found them devoured them, took advantage of them. Go ahead.
And their adversaries said, we offend not, because they have sinned against the Lord, the habitation of justice, even the Lord, the hope of their fathers.
That's what they were saying. This is godly. We can make them slaves. They offended God. So now, go to Ecclesiastes 7 and 7. Ecclesiastes 7 and 7.
The book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7 and verse 7. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad.
So you got to think about it at that time. Oppression make a wise man mad. You're looking at your people get oppressed. Just imagine you, Martin Luther King, you the most intelligent people of the time. They looking at the state of our people. They looking at the oppression, and they're mad. What do? Read that again.
Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart.
But their heart was getting destroyed through gifts. What's a gift? The Civil Rights Act. The voting right. That's a gift because they didn't what? They didn't mean it. They just wrote down on paper, niggas can vote now. And then when it was time to vote, y'all niggas get out of here. The gift was that was just a gift. They writing it down on paper, but that's it. That's the gift was destroying the heart because they did all that work and they thought they did something. They got it passed, everybody happy. But when it's time to go on there and vote, you got an Edomite with a pistol, like get up out of here. So that's the gift. The gift was just writing it down on paper. So now, go to Ezekiel 22 and 29.
Ezekiel 22, verse 29. The people of the land have used oppression.
It said the people of the land use oppression. Go ahead.
And exercised robbery.
Go ahead.
And have vexed the poor and needy. Yea, they have oppressed the stranger wrongfully.
Say they have oppressed the stranger wrong. That's the people of the land. That's what this is exactly. It's showing the Bible is fitting our history. It's fitting our history. Now let's look at Martin Luther King. Because we just seen that I Have a Dream speech. He said that, let's go back to that video. Let's examine what he said. Right, that one. And fast forward to the main, fast forward. Or just scroll before you share it out, just fast. Yeah, go back, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, right here. Gotta scroll out. So now let's examine what he said to show what he was saying.
Able to join hands with little white boys and white girls.
The March on Washington in 1963, led by Martin Luther King Jr.
200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come united in one cause.
One day right now in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
This becomes visualized on the news and begins to change.
So when you go further, because we're not going to go through the whole speech, but when you go further, he was given like the kingdom of God, how the kingdom of God, because he said, I've been to the mountaintop, I've seen, so he's kind of giving like, this is how it's supposed to be according to God. That's what he was saying. According to God, we're supposed to be sisters and brothers with little black boys, little black girls, supposed to be sisters and brothers with little white boys, little white girls holding hands and kumbaya. Like this is God's plan. God showed me this. This is how it's supposed to be. So let's see, is that wrong? Jeremiah chapter 23. And we gonna start at 25.
Jeremiah chapter 23, starting at verse 25. I have heard what the prophet said, that prophesy lies in my name.
So he said, this is God. He said, I heard what the prophet said, that's prophesying lies in my name. Go ahead.
Saying, I have dreamed.
Saying what?
I have dreamed. I have dreamed.
Saying I heard what the prophet said, us talking about I have dreamed. I have this is not what the prophets are supposed to be talking about coming from me. Go ahead.
How long shall this be in the heart of the prophets that prophesy lies? Yea, they are prophets of the deceit of their own heart.
So what Martin Luther King was doing was prophesying out of his heart. That's what he wanted to see. That's not what God wanted. Go ahead.
Which think to cause my people to forget my name by their dreams, which they tell every man to his neighbor, as their fathers have forgotten my name for Baal.
Because he's a first, you're a reverend first, activist second. You're supposed to be preaching repentance. Repentance is the reason why we is getting oppressed. Go ahead.
Verse 28. The prophet that had a dream, let him tell a dream.
He said, if you got a dream, tell that as a dream. Keep my name out of it. Quit acting like this finna be God's will. If you got a dream, you tell that as a dream, but that's not my will. My will come out my word. Go ahead.
And he that has my word.
Yeah, he said, he that got my word, go ahead.
Let him speak my word faithfully.
He said, speak my word faithfully. He should have been speaking God's word. Ain't nowhere in the Bible where he talking about black boys, black girls holding hands, sister and brother, kumbaya. That's nowhere in the Bible. You're prophesying out your own heart. Go ahead.
Let him speak my words faithfully. What is the chaff to the wheat, saith the Lord? Is not my word like as a fire?
He said, ain't my word like fire? Why are you not speaking this? You gotta, this is the biggest platform that a black man had at that time. Why you ain't speaking my word? That's the time to speak God's word. not about your damn dream. He should have been, that's the biggest audience any black man had ever at that point. He up there talking about a dream. So what God said? Read that again.
Is not my word like as a fire?
He said, "What? My word is like fire. Why you ain't speaking that?" Go ahead.
Said the Lord, and like a hammer that breaketh the rock in pieces.
Go ahead.
Therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, said the Lord, that steal my words, every one from his neighbor.
When you say steal my word, that means you're not speaking it. You stealing it. If we don't speak God's word, you're stealing it from your neighbor. Go ahead.
Behold, I am against the prophet, said the Lord, that use their tongues and say, he saith. Behold, I am against them that prophesy false dreams, said the Lord, and do tell them, and cause my people to err by their lives.
Say, cause my people to err. Because now you got everybody, you got integration on everybody's mind. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be friends with white people. We gonna be holding hands. America's gonna get there one day. Now that's in everybody's mind instead of repentance. Go ahead.
And by their likeness, yet I sent them not, nor commanded them. Therefore they shall not profit this people at all, said the Lord.
Said this ain't gonna profit this people at all. Because now we gonna look at how was life after integration. How was life after integration? He said, did it profit our people or did it not? Now, I respect Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, don't get me wrong. I respect him. Let me show you why I respect him. Go to John chapter 15. John chapter 15 and verse 13.
John chapter 15 and verse 13. Greater love had no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends.
So, because he died for our people. What he thought was right, even though it wasn't according to God, but he thought it was right, and he died. He died. He was standing up for our people, and he died for it. So it said, read that again.
John 15 and verse 13. Greater love had no man than this.
So there's no greater love than this. Go ahead.
That a man lay down his life for his friends.
That you lay down your life. There's no somebody that died for you. There's no greater love than that. So that's why I definitely respect him. He died for what he was out there trying to get through, but it just wasn't of God. It just wasn't of God. Go to Lamentations chapter 4. Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17.
Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 17. As for us, our eyes yet fail for our vain help. In our watching, we have watched for a nation that could not save us.
So you were trying to get help from the very people that was oppressing you. You think the same people that's oppressing you is the same people that's gonna save you. It's not how it works. That's not how oppression works. We're not gonna oppress you and save you. Read that again. That's called vain help.
Lamentations 4 and verse 17. As for us, our eyes as yet failed for our vain help.
Vain help is thinking you can vote your way out of slavery. How can you vote your way out of oppression? That's like you saying, I'm going to beat the devil at his own game. You can't beat the devil with his own game. You can't. That's like saying, I'm going to get an unclean spirit with an unclean spirit. No, you got to get rid of an unclean spirit with a clean spirit. Like you finna be better at the devil's game than him. Oh, y'all say, it's a law. It's a law that a black man is a slave. That's a law. Okay, well let's get the laws changed. I know what to do. Let's change the laws. Then y'all ain't gonna hate us no more. No, they changed the laws, and the Edomites, they still hated our guts. Still hate our guts today. We can't vote ourselves out of slavery. Let's get some more. Now let's see the after effects of integration. Go to the videos. And people they get so offended when you say that about Martin Luther King. They get so offended. But the truth hurts. I respect him. He died for his cause. He set a cause. He was for, no, don't get me wrong. He was for our people. He was definitely for our people. But he was a reverend first. You're a reverend first, activist second. And then on top of that, he brought in Gandhi's. He tried to mix Gandhi's beliefs with the Bible. You can't. Shut up. Or go back. Go to before integration. Before, right there. Skip. Well, go ahead. Go do your thing. Play that.
In the Black community, we were prepared by setting certain goals, objectives for ourselves. This was done primarily in the home, in the church, and in the school at that particular time, because schools had a heavy reinforcement into our characters because they were Black schools. Schools were not integrated at that time. Do the best that you can with your life. You are unique. You have a contribution to make. You have something to offer. You have a talent. You have skills, many, many other things that you do have. Go on out there into the world and get them. Don't stay here in Farmville. There's nothing here for you. It's a retired person's town, a little small place of this nature, but go on and develop it. College, if you can't go to college, take up a good skill. Skill trades were heavy then. We've moved away from that, of course. Now, but in the 50s, skill trades were very heavy. Masonry, carpentry, electronics, auto mechanics, and many, many others. So we were encouraged.
Oh, he said, put it on the side to side. So he said, skilled trades was heavy in Black schools. In Black schools, we were carpentry. We was teaching people how to do these things when they were teenagers. Carpentry, masonry, mechanics, they learning this stuff in high school. This is how the Black schools was before integration. They didn't have history class, reading class, like all these other classes. You learning because they didn't have time for that. You need to learn a skill, a trade, how to work. At imagine 14, 15, 14-year-olds knowing how to do carpentry, knowing how to be mechanic. They learn this stuff at 14, 15 years old. That's why our people was more mature back then. Our people was grown. What the comedian said, he said, man, I look at these kids, man, they young in the mind. He said, when I was 11, I was 25. Go ahead, play. Put it back on full screen.
The carpentry, electronics, auto mechanics, and many, many others. So we were encouraged, away from the retired person's town, little small place of this nature, but go on and develop it. College, We can't go to college, take up a good skill. Skill trades were heavy then. We've moved away from that, of course. But in the 50s, skill trades were very heavy. Masonry, carpentry, electronics, auto mechanics, and many, many others. So we were encouraged, pardon?
Then too, lack of employment, the young people had to go away from home. You know, every summer,
Right.
most of the young people around here went to Atlantic City to work.
Relative to white America, we were taught that a lot of the values that came into being were set by middle class, let's say white America. In a way, we were to emulate them, you know, because at this point we were at the very threshold of integration. Emulate them, take on many of these as much as possible, middle class values and virtues. That was a kind of inferior stigma placed on Black people. But you had to look through it to see exactly where, you know, the real truth behind it. That is a stigma of inferiority. You know, you're not exactly where you should be, you know, but you need to do this, you need to do thus and so, in order to be accepted in a white world, into a white culture. You see, they have their values, we have our values, but in a general sense, and the world was teaching this too. In a general sense, our values did not bear, they would tell us in general, as much weight as theirs. So let's try. What does this mean then? What do we say? Go to college, you know, excel in school while you're here, and wherever you do go. Appearance, reading, writing, many other things.
And then too, in this area, we were taught to stay in our place, you know, whatever that meant, stay in your place, because our parents were afraid that if we stepped out of our place, we might get killed, we might get hurt, because they knew that because of racism here in Prince Edward County, you know, anything could happen to you. So they were fearful. It hurt, but it brought about some self-pride too, because in school we were taught, we had role models, like I mentioned before. We had role models, and our teachers, you know, instilled self-pride, and we just knew that someday, you know, it wasn't going to be like this all the time. That someday we were going to be somebody. So you just kept that in your minds. And one day we're going to leave Prince Edward. We're not going to be informal the rest of our lives, you know. And for the most part, most of us did.
There were imaginary geographical boundaries in our minds as to how far we could go. There were imaginary psychological boundaries in our mind and emotional boundaries in our minds as to how far we could go, you know, relative to the Black-white situation. So we learned to work within the confines, to be creative as much as possible, to make, as Black people say a lot of times, make do with what you have. And by this adapt.
Go to the next one. Hold on, go. Click on that. Go off full screen. Yeah, you could just go. You could have kept sharing it. Go, scroll down. Go to integration ruined the Black community. Click that. So now we're looking at life after integration.
The best way to control melanated people is keeping them poor and disenfranchised. And this is what has happened to Black people in America. There's a reason why Black people have been economically undermined, because it's very easy to control poor people. When people are poor, you can do whatever you want to them, and they won't have the economic power to fight back. They won't have the economic power to put a politician into power to help them out. They won't have the economic base to really take care of their basic needs. So then you can control them any way you want to.
See, white folk lend us money. They don't pay us because they know that they're going to get it right back.
1866 and up to about into the 1920s, Black folk had the greatest economic achievement they've ever had in this country. Even though it didn't occur under integration, it occurred under segregation. Those Black folk had managed to acquire over 20 million acres of land according to the United States Census in 1920. 20 million acres of land. But between 1920s and 1950s, they lost almost all of it. Back in the 1920s up to 1940s, we had black broom factories, we had black mattress factories. Almost every black major city had at least 2 cab companies. We had black bus companies. We had black shipyard up here in Baltimore. When I say black bus lines, I'm not talking about just having 3 or 4 buses. We had over 500 buses, and this is in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And our bus company didn't just service just the black neighborhoods; it serviced the blacks and the white neighborhoods. We had 2 black cab companies. We had the Harris Cab Companies and the Campbell City Cab Companies. But they used to have their own restaurants. They had the best nightclubs in the country. The blacks had 2 baseball leagues. Each baseball league had 8 teams. We had over 500 of the best baseball players in the world. But what did they do? They wanted to integrate. So as soon as they put Jackie Robinson on the Brooklyn Dodgers, black folks said, we'll give up all of our black baseball leagues, black teams, and all our black players, and we can just get one black boy to play on a white team.
Black Americans were gung-ho about integration because we thought that would be our passport to freedom. We equated integration with freedom.
That scared whites to death. And see, at that time, you had whites, a lot of these white separate communities. You had white Polish communities, you had white Jewish communities, you had white Italian communities, you had white Irish communities. And white folks said, well, we're not going to if these blacks going to integrate, we're going to come together and organize as a unit. And so white folks then dropped all their little communities and said, no, we're going to organize as a one white block. We're not going to talk about I'm being Polish and you're Irish and German anymore. We ain't going to do that anymore. We're going to stick together as a group. We're not going to let all these blacks come and penetrate us.
Because we were doing things and becoming self-sufficient, that became a threat. So instead of them just coming out and attacking, because they couldn't just come out with an all-out attack, we were a little bit too strong for that, and we would have fought back, and there would have been a civil unrest that would have definitely undermined the security of the country. Instead, they said, well, let's invite them into a place that they've always coveted, and that is into the white estuaries of power, into the white citadels of power. Let us make sure we bring them in and incorporate them to us, and therefore, being that they're going to have to buy their facilities and all their materials from us, they're going to have to interface with us anyway. They're going to dress like us, act like us, and we will take the best of what they have and capitalize eventually and take it over. We will have quelled or stopped any threat or competition to our business. And that's exactly what they did.
The black folks stripped themselves of all their resources. They stripped themselves of their unity. They stripped themselves of their role models when all blacks used to live together. Then they had their own role models. All the doctors and lawyers and teachers with the black lived all together. You had a sense of community. You knew each other. You trusted each other. You worked with each other. You participated with each other. You learned how to buy from each other, to sell each other, to support each other, to care about each other, to love each other. When black folk up in integration, blacks never locked their homes.
We practice a very profound humanity. If an Asian opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. If an Arab opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. If a Jewish person opens a store in our community, we do not boycott and discriminate against them. We shop with all peoples. We treat all peoples equally. The problem is they're not treating us equally. See, we caught in our own humanity. And until we begin to address that and demand that others practice towards us the same human concern and love that we practice towards them, we will stay in this situation.
Why is everyone in the U.S.
That's crazy. He said, by integration caused all of our own stuff to go out of business. Our Negro League, theaters, they said we was thriving. We was thriving. They forced us, we can't come to y'all stuff. We got to create our own stuff. That's why we got the black colleges now. We ain't opened up a black college since integration. We had the HBCUs, all of those was created during segregation. We haven't opened up one since integration. We had all our own stuff. Go to the next Video is the history of Black Wall Street. If you still sharing, go to the one you sharing. No. Right there. Go to the beginning. It's the next one.
After unarmed father Terrence Crutcher was shot and killed by police, hundreds protested here in Tulsa. What many didn't know is that nearly 100 years ago, on these very streets on which they were marching, hundreds of African Americans were killed in one of the darkest chapters of Tulsa's and America's history. A lot of folks around here used to whisper about it over the decades, but nobody, black nor white, wanted to talk about it. And that history was being forgotten. Before it happened, Tulsa was the scene of a thriving, wealthy black community.
Black Wall Street was the most prosperous black-owned business district in 1921.
This was Black Wall Street. There were hundreds of black-owned businesses, everything from banks to pharmacies to the doctor's office. And black folks were making really good money. There were even 2 movie theaters, all black-owned and operated. Segregation was in full effect. We heard that there was a gentleman who owned a plane. Is that true?
Simon Berry was a pilot and owned his own plane.
Black folks were rich here, basically. They lived very good lives.
Many of them, yes. Yes, which caused some envy and anger among white people who commented, how dare those Negroes have a grand piano in their house and I don't have a piano in my house.
1921 rolls around. What happens?
Some type of confrontation between
It's in the
blacks and whites
20s.
was inevitable because of
We was rich.
racial
We was
climate,
$100,000.
the presence of the Ku Klux Klan in almost every aspect of our society. But on this particular day, May 31st, 1921, a young black male named Dick Rowland, who worked as a shoe shine boy in downtown Tulsa, went into the Drexel building where he had been given permission to get water and use the restroom. There was a young white girl named Sarah Page who was an elevator operator.
Pause.
And Dick Rowland,
Everything always start with an Edomite woman. Everything always start with a little white girl. Like
That's be them secret agents that they play.
that they love.
That's what they saying.
Like that's you. If you deal with a woman, they pissed.
That's how they begin the attack.
Any attack, Emmett Till.
You remember that movie, Rosewood?
Rosewood, yeah. They brought down Rosewood. Started off with a lie from an Edomite woman. Like everything, it always some little white girl. And now today, Jonathan Majors, whole career done, cause he's some little our people don't learn, man. They been out down.
They say that's the black man's kryptonite.
The black man. Everything always start with a little white girl, little shoeshine man. Got a little white girl. Go ahead, sir. And she lied because she was cheating with another Edomite. Got caught. It's always the lie of a little white girl. Come on, that's crazy. I didn't even know this until I did this research.
every day would go into
Did
the
about
elevator
20 seconds.
with Sarah, a male named Dick Rowland, who worked as a shoe shine boy in downtown Tulsa, went into the Drexel building where he had been given permission to get water and use the restroom. There was a young white girl named Sarah Page who was an elevator operator. And Dick Rowland every day would go into the elevator with Sarah Page. On this particular day, after the elevator doors closed and Sarah Page and Dick Rowland were alone in the elevator, a few moments later, there was a scream. The elevator doors opened. Dick Rowland ran and was later arrested, and Sarah Page initially claimed that she had been assaulted.
Brown says Page never pressed charges, but authorities did, and the damage was done. By the end of the day, the rumor mill said Page had been raped.
As word spread, angry whites were determined that they were going to take matters into their own hands.
A large crowd of white residents gathered at the courthouse. They demanded Dick Rowland be lynched.
How did the Black community respond to that demand to lynch this young man?
They were willing to risk their lives. They knew that they would be risking their lives to help defend Dick Rowland. And thousands of whites gathered in front of the courthouse. A white man approached a Black man with a gun. He said, "What are you going to do with that gun?" He said, "I'm going to use it if I have to."
The two men argued. There was a struggle over the gun. It fired. The white resident was shot. All hell broke loose.
Blacks retreated to the Greenwood district, where they set up a barrier at the railroad tracks and were able for a short time to keep whites from invading their community. But because they were so outnumbered and outgunned, whites eventually broke through the railroad tracks and invaded what was home to Black Wall Street, the Greenwood district.
This was the result. 35 city blocks of the Black neighborhood burned to the ground. Historical photos show Black residents shot dead in the streets. The historical account is that at least 300 people were killed.
There were children that were here that had been armed by their parents, that had been told that they could come down to Greenwood and shoot and kill an innocent person. Those are the same people that we grew up with in our communities, that were a part of our society.
How many Black people lost their lives?
There's really no way of knowing exactly how many people lost their lives, potentially thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
What is worse, survivors say they remember death not just in the streets, but raining down from the sky.
Many of our race riot survivors have commented that they remembered seeing planes flying overhead, dropping bombs, dropping nitroglycerin bombs.
Mrs. Hazel Smith Jones is believed to be the last living survivor in Tulsa. She's 97 years old.
My daddy wasn't at home, just the kids and mama. They came and got us.
Was it white people from the city?
And got us to fairground. And we was there for about 2 or 3 days.
To the fairgrounds?
And my dad didn't know where we were.
Did your family want to leave?
My mother, with all this stuff going on.
We can stop it there. So we see that they bombed it, like they was thriving, and it all starts with a little white girl every time. Every time, some little white girl. So now you can stop sharing it. Let's get Deuteronomy chapter 32. So now we see what happened after integration. Integration, we lost our ability to do things for ourselves. Now we didn't need our own schools. We didn't need the Negro League. We didn't need our own sports. We didn't need our own restaurants, our own stores. Now we can just go give our money to them. So now all of our stuff went out of business. It went out of business, which was horrible. So now let's look at separation. Get Deuteronomy 32:8.
Deuteronomy 32 and verse 8. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons,
he did what?
When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bound of the people according to the number of the children of Israel.
So God separated the sons of Adam. Separation is God's plan. Separation is God's plan. Verse 9.
For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance.
He said, you know what? He gave everybody, all the other nations, their own land. He said, I'm going to separate y'all. Y'all have y'all own land, but the Israel is mine. If the Israelites, y'all mine. Everybody else, everybody get their own stuff. But read verse 9 again.
For the Lord's portion is his people.
And his people, that's his portion. Go ahead.
Jacob is the lot of his inheritance.
Go to Leviticus chapter 20. Now let's just look at separation. What do the word holy mean? The Definition for holy is set apart. Separate. Separation is God's plan. Leviticus 20 and 25.
Leviticus
But before we get that, get Deuteronomy 7 and 6.
Deuteronomy chapter 7 and verse 6. For thou art an holy people unto the Lord thy God. The Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all that are upon the face of the earth.
It said above all people upon the face of the earth. It say, Yah holy. The Israelites is holy means separate. So integration is not God's plan. Separation was God's plan. Holy. Now get Leviticus 20 and 25.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 20, verse 25. Ye shall therefore put difference between clean beasts and unclean.
So this talking about the food. You know, we can't eat the shrimp, crab. Difference between clean and unclean. Go ahead.
And between unclean fowls and clean. And ye shall not make your souls abominable by beast or by fowl, or by any manner of living thing that creepeth on the ground, which I have separated from you.
Did what?
Which I have separated from you as unclean.
So there's always a separation with God. Good, evil, clean, unclean. Go ahead, verse 26.
Verse 26. And ye shall be holy unto me.
He said, you shall be holy. Go ahead.
For I, the Lord, am holy.
Because I'm holy. Go ahead.
And have severed.
I have did what?
And have severed.
And I have separated. Go ahead.
You from other people, that ye should be mine.
So there is a separation. Ain't no integration. There's a separation. Chronicles chapter 17. Already throw this down. First Chronicles 17:21. They say that every week. First Chronicles 17:21.
First Chronicles 17 and verse 21. And what one nation in the earth is like thy people Israel?
You see how God feels about Israel? He said, what nation on the earth is like my people Israel? Read that again.
And what one nation in the earth is like thy people Israel?
Go ahead.
Whom God went to redeem to be his own people, to make thee a name of greatness and terribleness, by driving out nations.
By doing what?
By driving out nations from before thy people, from whom thou hast redeemed out of Egypt.
He said he drive people away from Israel, not integrate people with them. So God's plan is separation. So we went wrong with integration. We went wrong with thinking integration was the answer. Even the people back then that tell you that's where we went wrong at. Because when we integrated, all our stuff went out of business. He said if you put one black person in the white baseball, we'll get rid of all our teams. What? What the hell kind of deal is that? Go to Psalms 147 and
Psalms 147. Psalms chapter 147, verse 19. He showeth his word unto Jacob, his statutes and his judgment unto Israel. He had not dealt so with any nation. And as for his judgments, they have not known them.
So God didn't deal with any other nation. He dealt with his people, so that's who he gave his word to. That's who he gave his word to. Go to 2 Maccabees chapter 6. So where do integration come from? Integration comes from the heathens. Even though the so-called white people, they didn't want to integrate, that's just of pure hatred. They was blind. Now they see that was just pure hatred. But now they see when they smarten up, they see that integration was gonna benefit them. They know because integration benefited them. They just got rich. But back then, they wasn't smarter than their hatred back then. But the Gentiles in the Bible, when you read these stories, they always knew that. They always knew integration was the way we get rich and make them forget about their God. Watch this. Go to 2 Maccabees 6 and start at 6.
2 Maccabees chapter 6 and verse 6. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. And in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices. And when the fast of Bacchus was that again?
Feast. When the feast.
And when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus, carrying ivy.
So they had to partake in the idolatrous feast day. Go ahead.
Moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices.
So now we're seeing that they want them to live like us. They wanted the Israelites to live like them. Go ahead.
And whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to death.
Whoever don't want to integrate, y'all gonna be put to death. Go ahead.
Then might a man have seen the present misery.
So they always wanted to integrate because they know that it benefits them. Go to 1 Maccabees 1 and 41.
1 Maccabees 1 and verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his law. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king.
You see, it say everyone leave their own laws. Go ahead.
Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land.
They wanted to follow the strange laws of the land. Jump to verse 48.
That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances.
Because integration makes us forget God's laws. If we forget God's laws, we forget what? Our nationality. That's where integration goes. And then we make their laws and their gods over ours. That's the thing that happened with integration. When we go to integration, guess what? We start to live like Gentiles. We start to be like Gentiles. So God is never for integration. He told us, no, y'all supposed to be separate from them. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 3.
Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, verse 3. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son, for they will turn away thy son from following me.
You see that they're going to turn away your son from following me. That's what God don't want. So there is no integration because the Gentiles serve idols. If y'all integrate with them, they going to turn you away from me. So he's always for separation. Verse 4.
Verse 4.
Was that 4? Yeah, verse 4.
For they will turn away thy son from following me, that they may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you, and destroy thee suddenly.
And they know that. They know we are in sin. They over us. They know that. Go to 1 Chronicles 5:25.
1 Chronicles chapter 5 and verse 25. And they transgressed against the God of their fathers, and went a whoring after the gods of the people of the land, whom God destroyed before them.
You see that? It says, so when you read the Bible, whenever God sent us into slavery for sin and idolatry, he saved us when we didn't follow the people of the land. When y'all get familiar with the Bible and y'all read these stories, you're going to always read Israelite sin, God sent the Egyptians, or not the Egyptians, the Assyrians, or the Babylonians, the Chaldeans, the Persians, the Medes, the Romans, the Greeks. He always used the other nations to punish us. When he saved them out those captivities, when what? They stopped following the people of the land and turned back to God. So during the civil rights movement, the answer would have been to what? Separate from the people of the land and turn back to God. It's still the answer today. We're just not doing it as a nation. That's the answer. But we wanted to integrate with them. That's totally against God's will. That's totally against God. He's all about separation. You can't be like the heathen. You can't be like the devils. Because now you're going to have the devil. Let's go to another video. Let's get another activist for our people. Go to the same one you're sharing now. Go to Malcolm X, Integration Isn't Dignity. So Malcolm X, he had the right idea. But I'll tell y'all something about Malcolm X. Malcolm X didn't believe in integration, but he didn't know that he was integrating. He didn't know, he didn't believe, he went against Martin Luther King for integration, but he didn't know that he was doing integration too. That's the thing. He didn't know you doing the same thing Martin Luther King doing. You just integrating with a whole nother heathen. Yeah. He integrating with a whole nother heathen. But watch what he say about integration. So let's play this.
As long as we sit around here trying to pray to the white man's God and go to the white man's church and into the white man's school, we'll be brainwashed by the white man's educational system, and we'll continue to look down upon ourselves, and we'll continue to be a beggar to him because we'll continue to think that he's superior to us. Instead of the Negro leaders having the black man begging for a chance to dine in white restaurants, the Negro leader should be showing the black man how to do something to strengthen his own economy, to give himself an independent economy, or to provide job opportunities for himself, not begging for a cup of coffee in a white man's restaurant.
Dr. King's goals are quite different from yours. He believes in integration, complete integration of society. Is that correct?
That's where Dr. King is mixed up. His goal should be the solution of the problem of the black man in America. Now, not integration. Integration is the method toward obtaining that goal. And what the Negro leader has done is gotten himself wrapped up in the method and has forgotten what the goal is. The goal is the dignity of the black man in America. He wants respect as a human being. He wants recognition as a human being. Now, if integration will get him that, all right. If segregation will get him that, all right. If separation will get him that, all right. But after he gets integration and he still doesn't have this dignity and this recognition as a human being, then his problem is still not solved.
Well, isn't this exactly what Dr. King is looking towards? And that is the day when the Negro will be treated with dignity. Wasn't this, after all, the result of the Montgomery bus boycott?
No, because I don't think you can, having an opportunity to ride either on the front or the back or in the middle of someone else's bus doesn't dignify you. When you have your own bus, then you have dignity. When you have your own school, you have dignity. When you have your own country, you have dignity. When you have something of your own, you have dignity. But whenever you are begging for a chance to participate in that which belongs to someone else, or use that which belongs to someone else on an equal basis with the owner, that's not dignity, that's ignorance.
The best.
So he was on the right. Everything I see exactly what he was saying. He was on the right path, but he didn't know. So he was saying separation. He said, "Hey, hold on, nobody give a damn. You riding in the front of the bus, back of the bus, middle of the bus. You get your dignity when you got your own damn bus." Oh, I see fact. That's right. He was on something. But let's keep watching. Go. So the next one is Malcolm X forcing integration. Right there. No, forcing integration.
And National Representative Malcolm X, the minister of the Black Muslim community in New York, and National Representative of Elijah Muhammad, the spiritual leader of the Black Muslim movement. Mr. Malcolm, may I ask you to tell us something about the Black Muslim movement in America? What is it? What does it stand for?
Well, it's number one, it primarily is a religious movement here in America that's designed to reform the black man or the so-called Negroes, reform us morally, and enable us to stand on our own 2 feet and do something for ourselves. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our religious leader, teaches us the importance of doing something for ourselves now rather than trying to continue to force ourselves into the white community or upon the white man. He teaches us that if we would do something for ourselves, clean up ourselves, morally, intellectually, and otherwise, and then try and do something for ourselves economically, we would be recognized and accepted by others. But as long as we try and force ourselves in upon others now without having done nothing to prove that we are on any kind of equal basis with them, there will always be this race tension and race problem.
When you say force yourselves upon others, upon the white community, how exactly do you mean that?
Well, any form of integration, forced integration, any effort to force integration upon whites is actually hypocritical. There's a form of hypocrisy involved. If a white man puts his arm around me voluntarily, that's brotherhood. But if you hold a gun on him and make him embrace me and pretend to be friendly or brotherly toward me, then that's not brotherhood, that's hypocrisy. And what America is trying to do is pass laws to force whites to pretend that they want Negroes into their schools or in their places of employment. Well, this is hypocrisy, and this makes a worse relationship between black and white, rather than if this could be brought about on a voluntary basis. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that what should happen is the black man himself should learn how to develop himself in the same sense that the white man has developed himself. Then they can both come together and recognize each other as equals.
Well, how can the black man develop himself as a separate society?
Well, it's easy. He's separate already. The fact that you have Harlem, the fact that you have the Negro ghetto and the so-called Negro slum, he's already separate. The fact that he's a second-class citizen is a political separation. The fact that he's the last hired and the first fired is an economic separation. Only in this form of separation, the black man is exploited. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that we should be separate, all right. But in this separate state or separate existence, the black man should be given the opportunity and the incentive to do for himself what the white man has done for himself. If you have an all-white neighborhood, you don't call it a segregated neighborhood, but you call an all-black neighborhood a segregated neighborhood. Why? Because the segregated neighborhood is the one that's controlled by from the outside by others. But a separate neighborhood is a neighborhood that is independent, it's equal, it can stand on its own 2 feet, such as the white neighborhood. It's an independent, free neighborhood, free community. They're not trying to force themselves upon anyone, socially or otherwise. But the Negro neighborhood, which is inferior, is begging for a chance to integrate itself into that which is superior, which is not going to happen. It's going to cause trouble.
Well, in other words, then you think the Negro has...
Yeah, I get a couple more. Get Malcolm X from Mecca. That one.
There's one simple vision hack anyone can use to improve vision, so you can say goodbye to your optometrist for good. Did you know that vision impairments have nothing to...
So this is when Malcolm X, he went to, because he was in Islam, so he went to Mecca, and that's when his mentality changed. His mentality, remember, he was for separation. When he went to Mecca, his mentality changed. So play this.
Malcolm X.
I think a lot of people are confused by the new Arabic name, El Hajj Malik El Shabazz.
I've always had the name on my passport, Malik El Shabazz, I only used it in the Muslim world. Well, Hajj is a title that is given to any Muslim who makes the pilgrimage to Mecca during the official Hajj season.
Well, will you now use Shabazz and drop X?
I'll probably continue to use Malcolm X and I'll probably use it as long as the situation that produced it exists.
You don't feel that Shabazz takes the place of X?
My going to Mecca and going into the Muslim world, into the African world, and being recognized and accepted as a Muslim and as a brother may solve the problem for me personally. But I personally feel that my personal problem is never solved as long as the problem is not solved for all of our people in this country. So I remain Malcolm X as long as there is a need to protest and struggle and fight against the injustices that our people are involved in this country.
Are you prepared to go into the United Nations at this point and ask that charges be brought against the United States for its treatment of American Negroes?
Go back to the list. Go to what is a Hajj. So he said everybody had to do a Hajj. So let's look at what is a Hajj. Malcolm X, that's where he went when he went to Mecca. He had to do a Hajj. A Hajj is something that every Muslim has to do at least once in their life. So let's look at what is a Hajj.
Hajj. The Islamic pilgrimage is the largest annual pilgrimage in the world. It is a religious duty that Muslims should undertake if they are able, at least once in their lives. It is both a collective undertaking and a deeply personal experience. One of the philosophies of the Hajj is that of spirituality and unity. All Muslims perform the same rites and are encouraged to share in a spirit of equality.
So that big rock that he in front of, that is known as the cobblestone. They have this in Mecca, the cobblestone. They go to the cobblestone, they do what he's doing. They bow down to it, they throw rocks at it, they walk around it. This is the cobblestone. They said this is a meteorite that Abraham said. They said Abraham set it up there. Keep going.
All pilgrims are expected to remain in a state of purity and simplicity during the Hajj as much as possible. This includes wearing simple clothes, which for men is 2 pieces of white unsewn cloth. Women are not restricted to a specific color, but are also encouraged to wear non-elaborate clothing. It involves a series of rituals that take place in and around Mecca over a period of 5 to 6 days. It takes place in Mina, Arafat, Muzdalifah, and Mecca, where pilgrims perform tawaf, in which they circle the Kaaba 7 times in an anti-clockwise direction. Muslims believe that the rituals of the Hajj have their origin in the time of the Prophet Abraham. Prophet Muhammad led the Hajj himself in 632, the year of his death. Saudi Arabia attracts around 3 million pilgrims every year from across the world for the Hajj.
Stop it there. So this is what Malcolm X was in. So the thing with the Islam are for Ishmaelites, meaning Arabs. So what Malcolm X was doing was he was integrating with the Arabs. You're integrating into a whole nother religion. In America, you on Martin Luther King head because he's integrating with white Jesus, with the so-called white man. But you're integrating with the Arabs. He doing their customs and everything. Went to Mecca, walked around the thing, did all of that. He's integrating with them. Exactly. So now, if we would have followed Elijah Muhammad, he would have been integrating us with Arabs, not knowing Arabs had us in slavery before them. Martin Luther King integrated us with white Jesus, the so-called Greeks, the Romans. So they're both is in some form of integration. Now, let's get Leviticus 26:1. Let's see if Malcolm X was preaching separation, but he was doing integration. Let's get Leviticus 26:1, because that was the Hajj. Bow down. You see, they had the image where they was bowed down to it, walking around it, all type of stuff. Leviticus 26:1.
Leviticus chapter 26 and verse 1. Ye shall make you no idols, nor a graven image, neither rear you up a standing image, neither shall ye set up any image of stone.
Just hold on. You should do what?
Neither shall ye set up any image of stone in your land.
To do what?
To bow down unto it.
That's exactly what a Hajj is. They going in front of that stone and bow down to it. Go ahead.
For I am the Lord your God.
So that's idolatry. They both was in it there. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King was integrating in idolatry. They both was off. He didn't even know it at the time. He didn't know that he's trying to integrate us with Arabs. What he was saying was right for in America. But you said come to Elijah Muhammad, follow him, and he's leading you to integration with Arabs. So now let's get Judges chapter 3. We are almost done. Judges chapter 3, verse 1.
Judges chapter 3. Judges chapter 3 and verse 1.
Because this is just not just separate from the so-called white man. We're supposed to separate from all the nations. Let's get it.
Judges chapter 3 and verse 1. Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them.
So this is when we got the land. The Lord left some nations. He didn't destroy all the nations. He left some nations there to prove Israel, to see if Israel is for real about me or do they still want to be like the Gentiles. Read that again.
Now these are the nations which the Lord left to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan.
Go ahead.
Only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof.
So look at who he left there. Go ahead.
Namely, 5 lords of the Philistines, and of the Canaanites, and of the Sidonians, and of the Hivites, that dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Bahamon unto the entering of Hamath.
So those are the nations that he left. Watch this.
And they were to prove Israel by them, to know whether they would hearken unto the commandments of the Lord, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moses.
So he left them there to see if we was gonna follow the commandments and follow our God, or we was gonna follow these other nations' God. Do you see this? This in the time of the civil rights movement. Both of the two head leaders at the time wanted us to integrate with other nations. Y'all see this? We haven't tried to be, because people always say we've been following that Bible since we've been over here. No, we haven't. We've never followed the Bible as a nation, because following the Bible means keeping the laws and the faith of Christ. We never followed the Bible. Since we've been in America as a nation, we have never followed the Bible. Never. Verse 5.
And the children of Israel dwelt among the Canaanites, Hittites, and Amorites, and Perizzites, and Hivites, and Jebusites.
So we in the middle of them, and what we did, go ahead.
And they took their daughters to be their wives.
We married them, go ahead.
And gave their daughters to their sons, and served their gods.
And we served their gods. It's the same thing our two main leaders wanted us to do. Serve other gods. Go ahead.
And the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and forgot the Lord their God, and served Baalim and the grove.
That's all. In the height of the civil rights movement, we was serving the other nations' God. We was fighting Jesus, and we were serving Allah. Even wood and stone. Remember, Deuteronomy 28 said, y'all gonna serve either wood or stone. Now, go to 2 Corinthians 6. So what does it mean to separate? What does it mean to separate? Let's truly get that meaning. 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 16.
2 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 16. And what agreement have the temple of God with idols?
There is no agreement with God and idols. Go ahead.
For ye are the temple of the living God. As God has said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people.
Go ahead.
Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye separate, says the Lord.
And be what?
And be ye separate.
So he said, come from among them and be separate. Go ahead.
Saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing.
Go ahead.
And I will receive you.
So he said, when you be separate, I will receive you. Separation is God's plan. Verse 18.
And will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty.
So what does it mean to be separate? Let's get one more script, Nehemiah 10 and 28. What does it mean to be separate? Nehemiah 10 and 28.
Nehemiah chapter 10 and verse 28. And the rest of the people, the priests, the Levites, the porters, the singers, the Nethinims, and all they that had separated themselves.
They separated themselves from who?
From the people of the land.
From the people of the land. No matter what land you in, the Israelites supposed to separate themselves. Unto what?
Unto the law of God.
Unto the law of God. That's how you truly separate from anybody. It's not economically. It's not whatever they were saying. It's not integration. It's you separate yourselves from the people of the land by keeping God's laws. Go ahead.
Their wives, their sons, and their daughters, everyone having knowledge and having understanding.
Everybody who have knowledge and understanding, to separate yourself from the people of the land, you have to start keeping the laws of God and the faith of Christ. Nothing will never work, because these same civil rights, during this same civil rights movement, they will go march, have these big marches, get home and celebrate 4th of July. They'll go protest and riot after they killed Johnny for no reason. Come home, celebrate Christmas. Still keeping the same customs of the people that's raping, robbing, and murdering you. That's not separation. Separation is when you separate yourself from them and start keeping God's laws. That's truly separation. Because when you do that, that's what's going to break down their society. Imagine if they the only ones that's doing Christmas. The so-called Black, African-American, Latinos, and the so-called Indian not doing Christmas no more. This society would, it's already crumbling, but it will crumble even faster.
They'll be sick. Well, they'll be sick after that.
Go crazy. They'll go out of business.
Mm-hmm.
They make all their money on Black Friday. They will go out of business. They'll start selling Passover stuff. Y'all doing Passover now?
Yeah, we gotta figure out how to get these Negroes back in the stores, man.
The stores will be closed every Sabbath. Say, they don't even come in no more. We might as well close. You'll walk into the A-Rap store. They'll be like, "Shalom, shalom, brother."
They'll start selling fringes already connected.
Yeah, they'll be selling the white tees with the fringes on. They gonna follow us. They follow us now. Whatever we buy, that's what they gonna sell. Whatever we do. Imagine if we start keeping God's law. They gonna follow us. They gonna follow us. That's the real revolution. Everything else we prove it don't work. Integration made stuff worse. Now we got the mind of the devils. Now the baby mama drama, baby daddies, everything we worse. We 10 times worse now. We got their mentality now. So that's today's class. All praise to the Most High. We went a little long today. Before we get Matthew 26, well, while we get Matthew 26, if anybody got any questions, put it in the chat. Let's get Matthew 26.
The book of Matthew, chapter 26, starting at verse 6. Now when Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, there came unto him a woman, having an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, To what purpose is this waste? For this ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Jesus understood it, he said unto them, Why trouble ye the woman? For she hath wrought a good work upon me. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. For in that she hath poured this ointment on my body, she did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this gospel shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also this that this woman have done be told for a memorial of her.
So all praises for that. Mary Magdalene, she was a great example in so much that Christ gave her own memorial. Every time we preach this gospel, we got to get that shout out. So let's see what we got. Let's give a shout out to everybody in there. YBH, Shalom. Put the Tiffany Gordon, Shalom.
Letitia Bruton.
Shalom, Letitia. Shalom, shalom, sis, Letitia. Who's that? Letitia again. Katie Love. MJ, shalom. Nehemiah, shalom. Jay Moore, shalom, shalom. All praises, sis. Good class. So it looks like we ain't got no questions in there. Any questions here? Yeah, I was like, get on 2 hours. 2 hours. All right, go ahead.
With Malcolm X.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, before he came into the what was he?
Muslim. Yeah.
Wasn't he messing around with white women?
Yeah, he was Malcolm Little. He had got locked up. He was messing with white women, and yeah, when he got roped into Islam when he was in jail.
Basically, his form of repentance. But yeah, he was a little hooligan, you know.
She was killed. White lady said, I think that mine goes to it, but yeah, raped her or something, and then years later,
Emmett Till.
before she died.
Yeah, Emmett Till. Emmett Till. He was a kid. He was only 14. Yeah, Emmett Till. Yeah. He said, he said he raped her in the store. And all he did was whistle at her.
Was it even a whistle? It was the whistle.
He was whistle. He said, yeah. Gave her that little whistle.
Whistle heard around the world.
And she came out with a gun shooting at him. Man, said he raped. Yeah, man. Yeah, she confessed that it wasn't true.
You know, some people actually believe that with her confessing that right before she died, that was her making her peace with God. Like she gonna be straight.
Like that was her repentance.
Yeah. Like that was her gift.
Nah.
Like, you know what?
She out of there.
I'm pretty sure she got a different story to tell y'all now, but she can't tell it.
Right. All right, yeah. So I pray that I like to give all praises, honor, and glory to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Greetings to everybody to the that's scattered to the four corners of the earth. Our brothers and sisters, I pray that edification went out. And with that, we say shalom.